Who's going first?
Who wants to start?
Go on, you start.
Ladies first, they say, right?
I knew somebody was going to say that. Layla, do you want to start?
If you want me to.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm Layla, and what do you want to know? Who I am and something unique?
Yeah, a unique fact about yourself that we couldn't tell by looking at you.
Okay, how about I'm very basically playing the piano.
Wow.
Yeah, I started
That's
to play.
amazing.
That's different for me.
Yeah. Did you start that recently during Corona?
Yeah, about full lockdown.
Okay.
I absolutely love the piano, and I thought, you know what? It's been a lifelong dream to actually take up lessons.
Wow.
Once a week. So yeah, in lockdown they stopped, but now they're doing online lessons. So.
Oh, perfect.
No goal.
Yeah, that's good. And I guess you get to concentrate a bit more as well. And this is the best time to pick up a new skill, I say. And that's what I've been saying to a lot of people as well. Say that last bit, sorry. It broke up a little bit.
I said it's not really unique, but it's the most I can think of right now.
It's unique. We couldn't tell. You weren't out here with your piano there, so we couldn't tell you played the piano.
Wait, let's see your hands.
Hands,
yeah, those are definitely pianos playing fingers.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay, thank you so much for that, Layla. Who wants to go next, Jason or Michael?
I'll go next. My name's Jason Ofori. Work in the primary school setting. And I'd say the most unique thing about me that I can think of at the moment is that I've actually got an A-level in dance.
Jason, I would never know that, honestly. What dance specifically? What sort of dance?
This is the thing. When I put my name down for A-level dance, obviously back in the day in East London, I used to do like a lot of street dance. So when I put my name down for A-level, that's all I had in my head. But obviously the A-level was ballet and contemporary. And by the time I found out, I couldn't drop the A-level. But you know what? I got 117 out of 119 in my exam.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was
I think that deserves a round of applause.
Thank you.
2 marks off, 117.
117 out of 119, that was like the highest that college had ever seen before.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think you're in the wrong career then.
Potentially. Yeah, I don't know if I could do it anymore. I'd probably injure myself. But
could be the Ghanaian Billy Elliot.
Yeah.
How do you know that he's Ghanaian, Michael?
Ofori.
It's assumed from the surname.
Okay. Yeah. Identity, we're going to get there. Michael, go for it.
Cool, so my name is Michael Edison Odiaise. Unique fact. I used to play American football and I'm a quarter Lebanese.
Wow. I didn't know the quarter Lebanese. The football one I could tell, but the quarter Lebanese one, I wouldn't be able to know that.
Yeah. That's where the facial hair comes from.
That's interesting. That's good to know. And all of you have said something unique and very different, something that you've experienced maybe when you were a child, something that you're picking up now, and something that you're born with or is an innate biological trait, which all kind of surrounds and generates around identity. Because when we speak about identity, we speak about experiences one can go through. We can speak about the identity that's innate, that it's not changeable, such as your race, such as your heritage, such as your gender, and so forth. I know that's debatable, but that's for another day. But there's a lot of things that correlate and then build together that then develop one's identity. So for those that are just joining in, because there's quite a few people on now, those that are just joining in, this is the identity panel. We held this a few weeks ago as well. And the reason why we are doing this, as a youth organization, Life Creations are running an identity program. The identity program is based around young people understanding their gifts, their talents, their skills, who they are, what they do, and us just as a company equipping them and ushering them in able to fulfill their potentials. There's a lot of companies out there that say we're out here to empower, and that's all amazing, but we try to focus and hone us in on the fact that we equip them and we give them the skills and the tips that they need to be able to become the giant. So if you didn't know, what the ethos for Life Creation is building giants, and we believe that we can only make them become giants if they know their identity. So because of Corona and because we are locked down and everybody is not allowed to have any mass gatherings, although Boris has said we're allowed social bubbles now, I don't even know who's sticking to whatever at the minute, but we are now delivering this identity program remotely. So we are sending it into secondary schools, sending it into head of years, sending it into PSHE teachers, and they are literally distributing this program around secondary schools in London and within PRUs as well, and young people are still being able to engage with this identity program. So because I wanted to hear so much what other people felt and thought their views towards identity, I put this on and I thought to myself, it would be good to hear people from all different walks of life that are very, very passionate about identity. So those that have signed in, we also want to hear your views. It's not going to just be us yapping away and saying, this is what we think and this is what we think and this is the truth and so forth. But we also want to hear your thoughts on what does identity mean to you, what contributes to your identity. And if you have any questions for the panelists as well, feel free to type it in there. They may not potentially be able to see. I don't know if you guys can see on your side, but anything that they say, I'm going to relay that to you. Can you see on your side?
No.
Okay, that's fine. I'll relay it to you. It's the same with the others. I'll relay it to you, everything that they are saying. So one of the first questions I want to ask is, what does identity mean to you as individuals? Anyone can go. Anyone can go.
So, you know, I was thinking about this a bit earlier and I struggled with it only because I feel identity has a caveat with how you define yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I also don't think identity is something that's fixed either. Like the person I was at 17 isn't the person that I was at 21. It's not the person that I am at 32, if that makes sense. And I feel like because I defined myself or I held myself to a different standard or different foci, so to speak, at different ages, my identity differed. So before, I feel like it was about fitting in with everybody. And for me, I'll be completely honest, like I grew up in the struggle. My mum was a single parent. She was a dinner lady. It was me and my sister. And she was never one of those parents that was going to spend a lot of money on trainers or this, that, and the other. And I think one of the most difficult things for me was that I was a popular kid, but I was a popular kid without the right things. Do you know what I mean? So it was always, it was that much more apparent that I didn't have the Nike trainers, I didn't have the Averex jacket, I didn't have all of these things. And I would say because I didn't have quote unquote things or the things that contributed to having a strong identity, let's say during secondary school and college, because that's how society or my peers or even I defined myself as being something worthwhile, literally by the material things in life. When I was 21, I spent all my money on getting those things, if that makes sense. And it was almost like I was living in the past trying to prove a point that wasn't necessarily conducive to my age, if that makes sense. I feel like when I should have been, and you know what, hindsight's a beautiful thing, but when I maybe should have been concentrating on other things or putting my money to things that are going to, I don't know, have more of an effect on my life rather than Averex jackets or
Averex, oh my gosh,
oh my word, or Nike trainers. That is where my mindset was, because my identity was defined by all of these material items. And I think with age, and I can only really speak about my upbringing, the community that I was raised in as well. I feel like with age, people tend to slip out of that. They realize that it's not about just the physiology or just what you can acquire. But you get certain individuals that don't move on from that. They still care about the this, the that, the other, but they don't care about things like education or a vocation or generational wealth or buying properties. These people have now transferred the Nike trainers and the Averex jackets into, I don't know, renting a car and going to a rave and looking good, if that makes sense, because they still define themselves by these material aspects. So yeah, I think my point is that it's not fixed. I don't think it should be fixed whatsoever. You know, whether you get married, whether you have children, you know, these things contribute to your identity changing. And I think that's right and it's proper. Like, you shouldn't be the same person that you was 10 years ago. I don't think that is indicative of growth whatsoever. So I feel like I'm talking a lot, so I'm gonna pass.
No, you're flowing. I'm gonna pick out a few things that you've said once.
Yeah.
Flow.
Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, I feel where I'm at in life at the moment is, you know, finding things that serve me as a person. And I know it sounds corny because I feel like everyone's using that phrase, but when I say serve me as a person, it is, what do I wholeheartedly believe is my identity from what, you know, I read and articulate and understand. And, you know, I'm always very open to other people's opinions or beliefs or faiths, whatever. But my thing is, take what you like and basically drop the rest out. I don't necessarily feel the peer pressure anymore. And I'll give you a very good example. Like I was lucky to be able to buy my property last year, and I would say, and then like my car, I need a new car. Like, I can tell you about 15 different things that's wrong with it right now. And the old me would have got a flashy car and had the property and the car, but behind closed doors, I would have been broke. Do you get what I mean? But my identity, or how I define myself, it isn't by just material things anymore. Like, I've moved finally, and I appreciate that within myself. I've moved past that. So yeah, I'm still driving that banger that sometimes I don't know if it's going to get me to work or not, but you know what, we're still persevering because I know there is more to life. And I think the bigger picture is, and this is like me been there before, you know, living outside of your means because you're trying to keep up appearances because you feel that you need to fit in with either. And it's interesting. I never really believed it before, but the YOLO life, like, do you get what I mean? That lit life that you see on TV, that you think your friends are living. Do you get what I mean? But actually, when you scratch beneath the surface, like these people really don't have much going for them. Like, I define myself by my progression, where I can be in 5-10 years time. I wouldn't want to put myself into, I don't know, a financial hole or whatever, just so people can be like, oh yeah, that guy's fly. Do you get what I mean? Because I don't define myself by what other people say or think of me, unless these are people in my immediate circle. And I'm very picky as to who I have in my immediate circle, if that makes sense. And those are people that are forward thinking. Those are people that have foresight. Those are people that are educated and informed. Like, I always try and be the dumbest person in my circle of friends. Do you get what I mean? Because I always want to try and learn something new from the next person. So yeah, it's really about how you hold yourself to account, how you define yourself. And as I say, those foci, they should really change, you know. At 32, whatever, I'm living life great. At 42, how I define myself is going to be very different. And that's not necessarily saying that at a specific age you should be doing specific things. It's not about that whatsoever. It is about growth. Like, I always say, when people are like, I'm struggling with this, that, and the other, I'm like, those are growing pains. And that's a very good pain to have. Do you get what I mean? You don't want to be at a place in your life where you're stagnant. There is a difference between being, I feel like, happy with where you are and being complacent.
Yes.
I feel like complacency is going to perpetuate boredom. And then I feel that leads into envy. Because when you're complacent, people overtake you. Like, in just, let's say, in my career, like starting out as a teaching assistant, and it's a very true story. I was a teaching assistant, and a lady who I was a teaching assistant for, I ended up being her manager. I was assistant principal, then I was vice principal, and I was her manager. And that was a very real example of her being complacent. And, you know, she was cool about it, don't get me wrong, but other people love to hate. Do you get what I mean? And that's always, not that it's a bad thing, but that's always motivated me to understand that, you know, you should be on to the next. Why wouldn't you want to be on to the next? There's bigger and better. Do you know what I mean? Even like whatever it may be, whatever journey you're on, do you get me? You're going from A to B. Once you get to B, you don't just stop there. You've got more life to live. Do you get what I mean? So I feel like you continue to grow your identity. You continue to add things to the list of definitions that define your identity. And
you said something quite powerful at the beginning. You said that when you were in secondary school, there was a lot of peer pressure. And what stood out to me of what you said is that there was a lot of peer pressure, but now you are free, and now you're no longer feel that peer pressure. You no longer conform to your surroundings, or a lot of things have changed. Now, a lot of young people out there, and we're living in a microwave generation now, and everything is pictures, images, and so forth. How would you suggest to them that they can receive that sort of freedom that you're feeling?
The simple fact that it's not real. Like, it's 100% not real.
Okay.
I saw one of the best memes ever one time, and I think it was something silly like Gucci trainers or whatever. And it was like a picture of these Gucci trainers, and right next to these Gucci trainers, so there's a picture of these Gucci trainers, and it was like a light shining on these Gucci trainers.
Okay.
And then the picture next to it was basically the bigger picture. So it was this room full of trash plates everywhere. Like, the room was a complete mess, but it was just shining in on these Gucci trainers. I feel like a lot of people promote the best things in their life. No one's life is that popping all day, every day. It just does not exist. And that is not the typical person. But if that is how you're feeding your brain, then I feel like you're creating a false narrative. It is not real. How many of these people have you actually met? How many of these people have you actually spoke to? And it's not about the items. It's not even about where they are in life. I feel like it's about the journey. Success isn't just a straight trajectory. Do you get what I mean? There's ups and downs. And I think it's that real conversation, actually getting to know people, getting to speak to people, which will foster true understanding as to how you can break free from these, these false narratives, basically.
Awesome. Quite a lot of people have typed in that they feel that when they were younger, this is the sort of stuff that they needed to hear. If you see me looking this way, that's what I'm looking at, guys. They feel that they needed to be able to do this at a young age. Some people are saying that they still are under that sort of pressure, and it's very dependent on their circles and who they're around, their environment, that it's kind of reinforcing that pressure as well. Some people have said that they've never ever felt that pressure, but that's why they've stood out and, not had many friends, and then now people have caught up to them and so forth. And someone else said that identity means to them, it's being yourself in a space that everybody wants you to be different and wants you to not be who you truly are. So not conforming, basically, I think that person's trying to say. Okay, awesome. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Jason. Layla, what would you say identity means to you as an individual? I know you're very passionate about this topic. I know all of you are very passionate about this topic, and I would like to hear what's your thoughts on identity. What does it mean to you?
Okay, so identity can mean many things to many people. So I have to respect that my view is personal to me. So when you ask me about what identity means to me, it could be different to how other people view identity. So personally, from a mixed heritage background, I'm half Persian, half English, and I grew up without my Persian family. So I age of not really understanding my heritage and my identity, which younger, and you grow up not understanding the two cultures and two religions and two worlds that collide within you, and two empires that collide within you, good and bad. You're kind of wide open then for people to make assumptions of your identity, to then give you an identity, give you goals for you to live up to, which actually, when you peel them away, they're not relevant to you as an individual. So for me, at a young age, that leaves you wide open for people to potentially pull you into different avenues or different avenues from a you that probably wouldn't do if you had a stronger sense of belonging and knowledge of your own identity. So for me, it's quite a question, and it's a answer that I did look for social validation. I did buy all the designer clothes as a teenager. I did think that was what gave me that validation. And through into my late teens, I was so fortunate that a lady that was Persian came to my place of work. She was a customer. I never met anyone. And she came to my place of work and started to talk to me and ask me my heritage. And then one week she said, will you come to my house for dinner? And I thought, this is strange. But I said, this is okay. And honest, to this day, I still call her an auntie because she literally got a map for me and showed me all the different regions of Iran, traditional food, traditional things that actually fulfilled a hole within me that I didn't know existed. So as I grew and read books and interacted with people from a Persian background, I found that I was stronger in myself. And when you build yourself inside with the strength of knowing yourself, I feel you know very much what your values are, what your rights, what your wrongs are, and you stand taller. So for me, when I think about identity, I know there's a whole range of things to look at.
It's a very broad concept, I know, yeah.
But personal, what does it mean to me, actually helped me to figure out my mixed heritage background and to be really proud of it. Because it can be confusing at times when you're a young person and you don't have the influence of both sides, you know?
I think that's an amazing story, and I feel that not even a story, it's an amazing reality, I should say, because it's not a story. This is your life, this is what you're living, and this is what you went through as well. Something very profound that you said at the beginning was that if you don't know your identity, somebody else will give you your identity. Can you elaborate on that point?
I think people, where I grew up, I'd be assumed that I was Pakistani or Indian or Muslim or Sikh, you know, all these different labels and then all the connotations that go with them. Are put onto me, and I'm thinking, whoa, I don't even know my heritage background, and I don't know these heritage backgrounds as a young person.
Yes.
It can be very frustrating because you actually are being pigeonholed into categories and in boxes, because people tend to want to put you in a box, to tick a box, to say, oh, that's what group you belong to, when actually I don't belong in any box, and nobody should.
That's quite interesting. And I feel a lot of people, when they think about identity, they do think about their culture, their race, where they're from. And I like what you said about the race, the religion and so forth, and the connotations that come with it. Because people don't just think that, oh, that this is a white male. They think about the connotations that come with it. Or this is somebody from a Ghanaian background or an African background. There's a lot of connotations that do come with it, and stereotypes as well. So it's quite interesting that you said that all of that was in your face at a very young age. But we really do thank God for that woman that came into your life and then was able to show you different parts of your identity and make you a bit more familiar with where you're coming from.
Yeah. So for me, it's very much about knowing myself from a heritage background, and it's made me feel a lot stronger as a person.
Awesome. That's very interesting. And I feel a lot of would you say that, let me not say I feel, would you say that a lot of young people need to be a bit more connected with where they're from? Like their culture?
Yeah. So I've just spent 18 months working in a youth offenders prison with 15, 18-year-old boys, so very young boys, extremely mature as well and intelligent and so much potential. 57% of those boys were from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background, and it struck me quite boldly that a lot of the boys I would sit and talk to didn't have a greater knowledge or connection with their heritage. It was very much identity within, an attitude within your position and or your reputation. It was not about where I come from and what's within me, you know. So I'd have a lot of conversations around boys, and they'd say, "Miss, what's your background?" And I love that because I'm not offended by people asking me what my ethnic background is. So I'd tell them, and then I'd get back, I'm Kurdish, I'm half Algerian, I'm this, I'm that. And we'd have such a conversation that you'd come away thinking that was really wholesome, you know, where we could explore each other's languages, because I had to go and teach myself Farsi, but your languages and your ability, and if you've been taught the language from your other parents, you know, all these different that lead to confusion or somehow feeling left out of the other group, or however it feels. It was really, really nourishing to have those conversations. So yes, I'd say some young people are blessed, thankfully, and have a knowledge of themselves and their heritage and still choose whichever path. But a lot of the boys I worked with would really benefit from having role models in place that could help them to connect with the heritage.
And maybe treasure it a bit more as well. Not so much, I think, because we've been so westernized, we're in the British system, and we are here. Sometimes it's so easy to forget that, oh, this is where I've come from. This is where my parents are from, and these are their morals and values. And maybe I need to embrace that, and at some point in my life, or get to know that a bit more, and how that can contribute. Somebody has just said now, they're from a Ugandan background. They said that their culture, being from Uganda means everything means everything to them. Means everything to them. It's a big part of their identity in terms of just places that they go to, restaurants that they go to, people that they socialize with. A lot of their circles are from people that are within the Ugandan community. Someone else said as well, they're from mixed heritage themselves, and they needed to get to know both sides of their heritage because they were only raised in the household with their mum, and they didn't know so much about their dad's side, but their dad was able to, as they connected with their dad, their dad was able to tell them a bit more. And like yourself, they felt a bit stronger, knowing where they are and knowing where they're going to. Someone said, personally growing up, that was Jason. Personally growing up, I was embarrassed about my cultural identity as it was a subject of ridicule. Yeah, things have changed a lot now in schools. Many students embrace who they are, and which is a wonderful thing to see.
Good.
Amazing. That's good to see. Michael, I don't want to ask you the same exact question. What does identity mean to you? Because I feel that we've spoken a lot about it, but what contributes to your identity? Because within answering that question, you'll be able to answer what it means to you personally anyway.
Sure. Firstly, thank you for inviting me on this platform, and to Jason and Leah. I hope I didn't just butcher your name. Everything they were saying, I completely resonate with. I'm going to just answer that question on what is identity quickly, and then I'll answer
go for it.
Because when I was hearing them speak, and again, it's like your identity is not something you can really open up the dictionary and get a really good definition. But when I was hearing them speak, I was more or less hearing the exact same thing. You know, an individual can state their identity or see their identity by the things that they wear. And at the same time, you can also kind of pick up on an individual's identity by what they're wearing or how they're dressed or where they're going, in the same way as their heritage. And I think identity, if I was to sum it up in a phrase, I'll probably say it's a set of principles or knowledge that governs the way a person thinks, reasons, and interacts. And I say that because your identity really is your understanding of something, and it governs the way that you think, it governs the way that you reason, and then it will govern the way that you interact. So I'm one of those guys that Jason was saying, he was embarrassed of where he came from growing up. I was one of those guys in school. I was half Jamaican, and any African that is on this call knows that when you was growing up around the 80s, 90s in school, you didn't really want to say that you was an African. Everybody was half Jamaican those times, and you had a Jamaican uncle or auntie somewhere far off. And obviously now that I'm older, I love my African heritage. Like, I embrace it and I fly the flag everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think beyond that, the things that go into and the reason I'm saying that is because with the understanding of my identity, it governs the way that I think. So when I was growing up, my dad would tell me, son, this is where we're from and this is how we do things. A young black boy, for example, he might grow up with a narrative that, because you're a young black boy, this is how you have to act. This is how you have to behave. And because of that understanding that, I'm a black person, that governs the way that they go through life. In the same way, if you have an Avrex jacket, having that, it gives you an identity that I'm this guy. So the way that you think, the way that you move through life, and the way that you interact with people is based on the understanding that this item gives me this social status, and therefore it changes the way that I interact with people. And I think thinking about what influences our identity, I break it down in twofold. You can't talk about identity without talking about purpose. So when you talk about an identity, the identity of somebody, ultimately you're talking about what is their purpose and what is their character, or what is that thing's purpose and what is that thing's character. So if you think about, Apple, you think, what is Apple's identity? And I would say they're known for really having really slick gadgets that work relatively well. And no offense to those that are Android users, but I would say Android is an operating system that works really well, but it doesn't look as slick. So when you get an Apple product, you kind of know what you're going to get. You know what you're expecting. And that means that you understand the purpose of it, i.e. what is it going to be used for? So if I'm a media student, I might want to get an Apple product over a Microsoft product. I understand there's a purpose for it. But then also the character is in how does it operate? And I think as an individual, for me, it's, okay, my purpose is this. This is this is ultimately what I think I'm here on earth to do. But at the same time, my character is going to define the way that I do it. You know, there's that famous quote that says, watch your thoughts because they become words, your words become action, your action becomes a habit, your habit becomes your character. And ultimately your character, it says, becomes your destiny. So if you put it that way, it's your identity ultimately is going to become your destiny. And I love what Leah was saying around, if you don't know your identity, then you kind of leave yourself open for other people to tell you what your identity is.
Yeah.
And myself, I grew up in South London as a typical South London boy. I mean, typical South London boy. I had the white gold tooth and everything. And for me, my identity was defined by where I was. If I grew up in Hertfordshire, I probably would have acted the same way. But because I was in that environment, it defined my identity as opposed to I define my identity. And I think, you know, obviously I'm a Christian, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, as a man sees himself, so he is. And then the famous inventor, Tom Ford, said, whether you think you can, you think you can't, you're both right. So ultimately, you're saying that whatever you think your identity is, you're right. If you think that you're an achiever, then you're going to achieve. If you think that you're a failure, then you're going to fail. And I think your identity, there has to be a core element to the identity. And when you ask the question of what goes into your identity, everything. So in the people talk about having mentors, the truth is if you don't have a one-to-one mentor, you have something or someone that is mentoring. For example, if you're a reader of the Sun newspaper, that is going to frame the way that you think, because that's the type of information that is constantly coming in. If you're somebody that watches Sky News over BBC News, then you might have different ideologies when it comes to politics, because both of those news stations, they pitch the same story, but in a different way to fit a political agenda. My opinion, not fact, by the way. So again, it depends on what is it that you're listening to, what is it that you're watching, what is the information that you're absorbing. You know, if even the type of films that you watch, the music that you listen to, all of those things are going to frame a mindset. And your mindset is an internal thing, and your identity is what everybody sees. So, you know, as I see you walking into a room, before you've even said anything, I can say that person is quite confident. I've never spoken to you, but I can see the makeup of your internal mind because you've fed yourself certain things. So therefore you carry out a certain energy or certain, you know, aura about you. And I think your identity, it comes with all of those different things. So ultimately, me as an individual, I have to think, what do I want to be known for? And it's not working from the outside in a sense of, let's say, for example, I grew up in South London, as I said, you know, thankfully I got a really good job and a great career within financial services working in the city. I could have allowed where I came from to define my identity. And I could have said, you know, I want to be a drug dealer, or I want to be, you know, a big gang leader. Some people would look at that and think, you know, that's negative. But when you actually take some of those onion layers off, you actually see that the person's core identity remains the same in the sense of they're ambitious. It is just what they're projecting that ambition to is negative. So I could have been the best drug dealer in the world. Take me out of that environment and then I adopt a new personality or a new identity, but the core principle, the core makeup of me remains the same. So now you've taken a narcotics dealer and you've thrown him into sales and he becomes the best salesman. Not because he's a good salesman per se, but because his identity, the core nature of Kim has remained the same. It's just been redefined by his environment. And that's why I say that your identity really is a set of principles or rules or whatever you want to put it that govern the way that you think and the way that you interact with people.
I feel that's very strong. I feel the word govern is very, very strong as well. Because you said, I'm just taking note that you said the music, your environment, these are all the things that will govern your behavior. Whatever you're
100%.
govern your trail of thought. And I really like the analogy that you used at the end about the drug dealer and putting him into cells, because I always use that analogy to youth offenders as well. So whenever I'm working with youth offenders, I say that you built up a phone and you built up a line, and you were able to get people to buy drugs from you, from your phone, from scratch. You have got something in 100%. You that if you then transfer that and project it through a positive lens, that your life can be completely different. So I really do 100%. Resonate with that in terms of that analogy. Yep, what you can say?
And just on that, just on that, you know, obviously we're in the height of it right now with, you know, Black Lives Matter and BLM, and I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and please hear me what I'm about to say, because it may come across a bit controversial. I don't know if I'm about to shoot myself in the foot. But it's like institutional racism, it exists, it's real, okay? But at the same time, there is an identity that has been given. There is a narrative that has been given to Black people. And I'm talking specifically now young Black males. Of course, young Black females have the same challenge. And for example, when I grew up, as most young Black guys did, your parents told you have to work twice as hard to get to the same level as somewhere else. Don't get me wrong. Where that might be true, it's fine. But the consciousness of that, I think, becomes crippling to an individual, because now they're always going to think that they're on the back seat. So they're always going to think that no matter how hard they work, they're not going to get their just results. And I say that to say this is that if you look at, let's look at the industry as a whole. You have in sports and in entertainment, you have Black people, male and female, that not only do well, but they pretty much dominate those fields.
Yeah.
And I'm talking in majority sports, even to the sports that are not traditionally known to be, you know, favorable to Black and ethnic minorities, like Formula One. You have to have some money to compete in that professionally. And you have someone like Lewis Hamilton that is dominating in that field. You think about golf, again, traditionally it's known as a wealthy, affluent sport. You have someone like Tiger Woods that has dominated in that field for years.
Yeah.
You look at tennis, you look at Serena and Venus Williams, who again came from quite a rough background, but they dominated in that sport. And you look at football, you look at basketball, you look at the NFL, you look at all of the sports, and then you look in entertainment. So you look at music, you look at movies, all of these things, and Black people are dominant in those fields. Then you can flip the script and you look at business and entrepreneurship. And I think in America, there's like 10 Black billionaires in the whole of the US. And you kind of think to yourself, okay, why is that? And for me, I think that the challenge is not necessarily ability. It is just access to resources and the narrative that has been painted.
Yeah.
So in the UK, I live in Brixton, and Timmy lives in Hertfordshire.
Yes.
Now, when I finish school, I want to go and I want to work in JP Morgan. I've got to send 101 different applications, call people up. The Timmy that lives in Hertfordshire can just go to his mum or dad who already have a network of people, and they can just call up and say, my son wants to do work experience. Can you get him a role? So the access then is a lot different. But beyond that, because I'm in this environment and I'm constantly being shown a mirror of you're good at athletics, you're good at entertainment, you're good at football, that is going to be my image of the possible. Whereas in other communities, they have a different image of this is what everyone in our family does. And we see a lot more of our people doing this in this place. And with that, it develops or creates an identity for you, thinking subconsciously, you know, because if you don't have a plan for yourself, society and the community will have a plan for you, whether it's good or bad. It would just lead you in a direction. So because I'm constantly seeing this image of drug dealers, rappers, football players, guys in entertainment, I think that is the direction I can go, because that's what I see. I see someone that looks like me constantly doing that and being successful. And I'm not seeing as many of the people that look like me in places of business, of influence, in the same kind of scale. So that becomes my identity. And I think if we want to change that narrative and we want to make it more equal, then the visibility has to increase. And where the guys that come from those neighborhoods don't have access directly because they have low social capital, a lot of these larger organizations have to bring that access to them. And that, I think, is one of the things that will you know, improve the identity of, you know, us as overall cultures, and class, that class divide also shortens up.
Yeah. I think that's quite strong what you're saying, and it's the consistent debate of, I don't know if you guys have heard of the concept of structure versus agency. And basically what that concept generates around is that structure just outlines the infrastructures that are in place and the inequalities that are in place and the systems that are in place, meaning that one class or one race is going to be able to win or be able to thrive. But agency refers to the capacity that an individual has to actually see the structure, see the infrastructure, see all of the inequalities, but still be able to rise above that limitation. So there's a consistent argument going on all of the time, that agency versus structure, that yes, all of these things are in place, so I'm limited and these are the only things I can achieve. And then there's the argument that, you know what, that's what's presented to me, but I'm going to rise above that limitation. And that consistently goes on in the mind of individuals, in the mind of young people. And what you're saying about the fact that a lot of things are being reinforced to young people, that this is what I can achieve. If somebody is exposed something, then they're able to maybe see further, dream more, achieve higher, because they're able to see it being done. That's quite interesting.
100%.
That's very, very interesting to hear. What practical tips, Jason, would you give to a young person in this day and age to be able to build their identity? What practical tips?
I would say you've got to be proactive in networking. And one thing I thought was always really prominent is you don't know what you don't know. So you've got to be able to be willing to sort of seek and find what's out there, if that makes sense. So we've spoken about almost cultural capital.
Yeah.
And I think within, as Michael was saying, within specific communities, the cultural capital is lacking, or the cultural capital isn't, what is the word I'm looking for? Isn't progressive enough. I feel education is not as necessary in some low income communities as it should be. But I think, like, sensitively, parents could have been school leavers themselves. Parents may have disengaged from education themselves and didn't find the value in education.
Okay.
Or education didn't, you know, serve those families in order for them to pass that same message on to their children. So you almost create sort of this generational dislike for education, and you lack that cultural capital. And what you learn is maybe fast money rather than the end game, having something. I don't know. I like to look at cultural capital as an open visa, something that you can take everywhere, every country, every community, every industry. Like before, like in early education, they talk about something called talk a lot families. And the most avid readers and writers are children from the age of 3 years old that are exposed to different settings, basically. So child A gets to actually go to the beach. That child gets to feel the sand. They get to go to the ice cream van. They get to go in the sea. Just from what they've experienced, and them talking to their families about that experience, and then relaying that experience. When they're reading the book about the seaside, that makes absolute sense to them. If, you know, your mum's working, do you see my point? If your mum's working all the hours God sends and maybe can't take you to the beach, and your only experience of the beach is what you see on TV in that 5-minute clip of EastEnders when they get to go to, I don't know, like Southend or something like that. That is a very, very different experience. So I would say, you know, try and open up your social circles, or, you know, there's a lot of free things in London. That is what I've realized getting older. There's a lot of free things. Like the school I work in at the moment is very middle class, very white middle class. And you know what? It's been eye-opening to work with that community, because they seek the freeness. It's crazy. The people with the most money, they seek this freeness. The amount of children that get scholarships even though their families can afford it, because they know these things exist. So they will send their children to, I don't know, tennis lessons for 6 weeks just to get that tennis scholarship. Or they will send them to an art lesson or an art camp for, I don't know, 10 weeks, because they know hardly anyone applies for the art scholarship. So if you're just looking at like the economies of scale, if hardly anyone's going to apply for it and you're one child that's had 10 weeks of private art lessons, that's basically paid for your whole secondary education of private schooling. There are so many talented individuals that come from low income families, and it's not just about sports, it's not just about the art, it's about the academic side of it as well. But families don't know about 11 plus, let's say, or
I know,
tuition that can come with 11 plus. And it's about these families opening their network up as well. And I think as institutions, as schools, as local authorities, community centres, whatever, it's about reaching out to these families and making these resources available. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you know, it stops there. But I feel if we recognise as a country, as institutions, that actually people don't know what they don't know.
Makes sense.
Provide them with that knowledge, but I do feel as individuals, you know, you've got to be pragmatic, and you do have to be, what is the word I'm looking for?
Seeking, you said that,
you need to basically almost, no one's going to give it to you. You definitely have it. If you're hungry for it, you need to look for it. You know, Google's your best friend. When we were younger, we really didn't have access to internet. I mean, you can find a lot out there. So my thing is networking. So key. So I feel like any successful person, you know, relationships, like professional relationships, social relationships, are very, very key to your progress. And I would never ever burn any sort of career link. As much as you may like or dislike someone, you don't know who's offering you your next job or your next opportunity. And word of mouth is a very powerful thing. And I feel like mud sticks. I mean, if you've got a negative narrative to your name, that can spread like wildfire. Where actually, if you do something very positive and people recognize you as your reputation can precede you. If you walk into a room full of people, they're like, "Oh, you're that guy." Yeah, I've heard of you. And I think that's 50% of the way there. So definitely learning that there's more than one form of cultural capital, and you're only going to learn or experience that from networking, I think.
How would you say they can network more? Because they are just very, well, not to make a generalization, because we are in this microwave generation, and everything is just, people don't even speak on the phone no more. It's just snap, or I DM'd her, or I DM'd him. It's not so much, let's meet up without our phones, let's communicate. So how would you actively say that they can go out, just one way they can go out of their way to be able to build that effective network that can help towards that?
I would say read something different. I feel like lots of things are based on algorithms. If you search one thing, that's what's going to constantly come up. Like, change that algorithm and look for something different. Something new.
Something different.
And that's all it is. Think about what it is that you want to do and break it down, and just start the search from there. And there's always going to be an expert in whatever field. Seek that expert, but you've got to look for it. That expert isn't going to fall into your lap. But I don't think you necessarily need to go out there and look for people face to face. Even like a lot of the times, I just look at YouTube clips. And what I hear or what I learn almost informs my next step. And I think it builds on from there. And then that's how you start to build a network or a hub of people. And as time goes, that's going to grow. And hopefully you can, I like to start quite broad, and then as time goes on, you just start to narrow
it down.
So what it is you are specifically looking for. But, you know, the key really is like reading. And researching. And it's not all day, every day. It can be 5 minutes. Like we like to say we don't have the time. You make the time for what you want to do. And that is just the bottom line. It takes 5 minutes, and every 5 minutes is a step closer to you achieving or getting what it is you're trying to gain.
Excellent. That's amazing. Someone has just signed in now saying that they agree with, not signed in just now, but someone has responded to what you've said, that they agree that that's the way that they find out and step out of their comfort zone, that their motto is that they try to do something new every single day, whether that's going to a new space, whether that's talking to someone they've never spoken to before, or whether that's even trying a new drink or doing something new out of their comfort zone, and then they'll begin to know who they are a bit more and begin to then develop within their identities. Awesome. Keep messaging in, guys, so I can keep reading back. The panelists are saying a lot of things, so it'll be good to get your thoughts on a lot of the things that they are saying. Layla, what sort of things would you have told your younger self in terms of your identity, in terms of a practical step that they could have been doing that could be beneficial for them, would you say?
I think if I was talking to my younger self, I would probably tell myself what other people think of me is none of my business, in terms of what identity they put onto. I think I would tell myself what other people think of me is none of my business, in terms of what label they put on me, because you spend far too much time trying to figure all that out. So I think that'd be, don't listen to what everyone says about you, and get to know yourself from an early age, and figure what makes you happy and what your best version of yourself is. And that it doesn't at 16, 17 that whoever you figure out you are is who you're going to be forever. It's just on what makes you feel good, not what you think other people need you to be. And the way I do that is through, I would tell myself then to pick up books. There's so many good books out there. Have conversations, put yourself in a different environment where maybe you feel like the odd one out, but actually, as long as it's a safe environment, you're being exposed to different conversations, different ways of thinking, and all of that adds up to you then starting to be exposed to potential opportunities for yourself. And like someone just said about, I think you just said about know who the next person is. You never know who they know. You never know what doors could be facing. That is so important, because you're building your network from the word go. So I'd say from a young age, don't listen too much about what the people think of you.
And I think that's what a lot of young people need to hear now, because it's being reinforced who they're not consistently through different media platforms and through different things. And you can see even sometimes when I'm teaching in a class and let's say there's 20 students and then 3 new students come in, the whole demographics of the class changes and people start acting a bit different. Somebody that was loud gets quieter. Somebody that was always enthusiastic and put their hands up now doesn't want to answer a question. And then I'll say, be who you are. I'll give a whole big speech at the end of it when they're supposed to be off going to break, and I'll be sitting them down saying that you need to be strong in who you are. You shouldn't let other people, change who you are. You shouldn't care about what other people think. So I think that's a very strong thing that you've said, you telling your younger self to not care what people think and do things that make you happy.
Yeah, with the right intentions. So within the youth offenders I worked in, they'd have classroom setups of 8 boys in each class, whether it was English, maths, whichever. And what you just described, if maybe one other person walked into the room, the whole dynamic can shift, Everyone starts to put on an act and a front, and it's like, guys, be yourself. Really difficult.
I like the bit that you said also about that you would, if find yourself and know yourself and don't become what other people need you to be. Can you elaborate on that point for young people as well listening in and needing to understand that sometimes that they can be being shaped for somebody else's purpose if they don't know their purpose, like Michael first said as well?
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult at a young age to figure out what your purpose is, because I personally think that's something I picked up in my 20s. And I think you can figure out at a young age what your purpose is at that time. But yeah, you've got to figure out your identity in order to find your purpose potentially. And I do feel that you are wide open for potential avenues that are not meant for you if you don't spend time on working on yourself.
Okay, excellent. That's strong. Just checking people just writing their definitions of what they think identity is. I'll read that towards the end, guys. Keep messaging in and I'll read that towards the end. That's amazing. Michael, what practical step would you give a young person in this day and age, a quick, fast-paced generation where everybody's telling you do this, do that, to be able to develop their identity? What practical step would you give them?
I'd almost say being that everything is so fast-paced, it might be an advantage, just as Jason was saying, the fact that you've got access to so much media. But I think going back to, again, your identity and purpose, I think the most important thing as a young person now is to understand that one day you are going to get older. And I know that might sound silly, but it's like, no, I'm being for real. Like when I was 15, like when I was 15, I don't know if I genuinely ever thought that I'm going to become 20. Like, and I didn't know what 20 was going to look like. So when I did get to 20, I could see my 20-year-old self screaming at my 15-year-old self and saying, what the heck did you do to prepare us for now? Wow. Because now we're trying to navigate it. And that's when you get adults that say, you know, I wish I knew what you knew now then, or I wish I could do it then, because their younger self never prepared for their future self. And I think practically what a young person should be doing is investing wisely into them, investing into who they are. You know, there's that thing of, you know, I heard Leah saying, you say that, you know, somebody comes into the room, you say to them, be yourself. When you're 16, that's pretty difficult because you don't even know who yourself is. So it's like, am I myself at the me that I am at home? Or am I the me that I'm with my friends? Like, who actually am I? And I think it's taking that step back and understanding who you are. Because also, you know, your identity plays a role in, you know, the kind of job you work and your occupation. And I usually share 3 questions that you should ask yourself, which is, what can I do? Or what can I do well? What do I enjoy doing? And what do I do well with the least amount of effort? Because what you can do or what you can do well is not necessarily what you enjoy doing. And what you enjoy doing is not necessarily something you do with the least amount of effort. You know, so but the thing is, once you make a list of those different things, you'll start to understand the kind of person that you are. So for example, somebody wants to go into hospitality and you ask them, why do you want to go into hospitality? And they're like, you know, I like the uniform that they wear or whatever. But if they actually scale it down, they might realize that they actually just genuinely like helping people. Then that opens up their world to so much. And now they understand that they're an individual, that their value comes from helping people. And I think value is synonymous with confidence. When you say that a person is in a room and somebody else walks into the room, the whole dynamical power shift changes. And effectively, in that person's mind, subconsciously, their value has reduced in the room or is increased in the room. So if you walk into a room and you genuinely think you're the smartest or the most, you know, affluent, or you have the most, then naturally you're going to be more confident when you walk into that room. It's like if I walk into a room with scientists and I have to give a talk about, you know, biomedicine or whatever it is, I'm not going to feel so confident, and therefore I'm going to be a bit smaller than I would if I was talking about a field or area that I know quite well. It's the same thing with life. If you're not confident in who you are as an individual, then you walk into certain rooms and feel like you don't belong. You'll walk into certain situations and you will feel out of place. And that discomfort is not necessarily a negative thing. It's just part of your growth, as I think Jason was saying, it's part of the growing pains. But what helps and supports you navigate through that is understanding who you are as at the core. And then once you understand that, invest into it. So if you're an individual that likes helping people, find yourself in positions where you can help other people, because you're ultimately investing into your personality. If you're a happy person, when we first came on the call, you know, Yvonne was saying that me and Jason were really, you know, melodic and very mellow tempo. But if you're a really bubbly person, that's a good thing. Invest in that. In the same way, if you're a shy person, and we take the concept of your character ultimately leads to your destiny, and you know that if you remain shy, you remain reserved, and you're going to lose out on a lot of opportunities, then start investing into you as an individual to grow in confidence.
Interesting.
And one of the easiest ways to grow in confidence, and I know it's a big thing for a lot of young people, is, as Jason said, network. Find somebody that inspires you or you're inspired by, or find someone that's completely opposite to you. You know, as human beings, the most natural thing is to walk into a room and then, you know, gravitate to the person that looks like you or sounds like you or acts like you. I was one of the most reserved personalities when I was in school. You would not believe. I was ridiculously shy. And I realized when I got into the professional environment that I was losing out on a lot of opportunities, not because I didn't have the skill, but because I kind of just sat back and I allowed everybody to go ahead. You know, I thought, you know, my time will come, kind of a thing. And I wanted to change that. And I started making friends with people that were completely opposite to me. And what happened was, as I was around them, I just listened and absorbed. It happens almost naturally because as humans, we learn by observation anyway. And then suddenly I started picking up some of their mannerisms or their way of conversation or the way that they start conversation or the way they interact with people. And I just copied it, you know, be a sponge. When you're young, there's this novel idea that you know everything and the world owes you something. And even as an adult, you can fall into the trap, and it is a trap, and you think that the world owes you something. So when you don't get something, you feel like you're hard done by. But the actuality and the realization is you invest in yourself so that you can pour it out to the world or a job or an industry or a career. And that's where you begin to realize the best value. And again, it feeds back into your identity, you know, because I'm constantly pouring out, I'm also constantly opening myself up to receive, get more information, get more knowledge. So the first thing I would say is invest into yourself, invest into your personality. The time that you spend on YouTube, don't spend it, you know, watching mind-numbing videos. Of course, everybody likes to laugh here and there, but invest it into things that are genuinely going to build up your personality. And I'm not just talking about like book smarts. So not just reading books for the sake of reading, but something that is going to improve you as an individual, because that's where your value comes from. It's your personality. Whether you're a motivated person, an ambitious person, all of those facets of your personality are what people want to you know, imbibe and invest in. And I would say the second thing is to build barriers in your mind, or build mental filters or the right mental structures. You know, so if you think about the way that you deal with situations, when you have rejection, how do you deal with rejection? Because that ultimately is going to form your identity as well. You know, when rejection comes, you take it on board and make the necessary corrections. When you're being corrected, or, you know, you're being told you haven't done something the right way, especially as a young person, even as an adult, it's painful, especially if you think you have that one person that is so critical of you. As hard as it might seem, keep that person close, because that critique, if it's taken on board and if it improves you, you take it on board and you become a better person. These are all things that are investments into you and building up your identity. So I'd say two things: invest into yourself and build the right mental structures. Excellent.
Just to feedback, I'm just going to give it in 5 sharp points for the listeners. Somebody also said at the same time, while she was speaking, was invest in your passion and you'll discover more about who you really are. A lot of people also, sorry, I'm just scrolling up, there's quite a few of them. A lot of people also said they agree with what Layla said in terms of not caring what other people are thinking about you, having that confidence, not necessarily arrogance, but that confidence in who you are. Then you're going to be able to go to great heights. Reading, a lot of people agreed with what Jason said as well, that the greatest things that they've learned in their lives are through YouTube videos or through books, and also through experienced mentors as well. And also what you said, Michael, about the going to people that are completely opposite to you. Somebody else also has written that down here as well. One of my friends actually wrote down as well that was one of the reasons that me and her started talking. She's quite quiet and she wants to get confident with a few things. And then, yeah, we've learned from each other in different ways. So that's amazing to hear. And just the tips, just to feedback again, just to round up, guys, because I know we've only got a few minutes left. The practical tips, I've written it down myself, was reading, investing in yourself, Don't care about what other people think about you, or do not let that, not in a necessarily arrogant way, but in a confident way, that you are confident in who you are. You're humble enough to know who you are, but you're confident enough to demonstrate who you are at the same time as well. And ending with what Michael said was create mental filters and mental structures, you said, yeah? So you're not just taking in, you're not just a sponge taking in everything, that you know what to say yes to, what to say no to, what to bring into your energy, what to receive, what to reject, and so forth. That's absolutely amazing, guys. We've literally got only a few more minutes left. Just to round up on finishing last words, is there anything that you can say that you learned today about your own identity through this panelist and through this discussion? Is there anything that you personally learned about your identity? You have to say something, guys.
I think,
this is not a rhetorical, you have to say something. Yeah, no, all jokes aside, anything that you learned that maybe you didn't know, it's only been an hour, but there's a lot of things that I've learned myself personally. That's why you could see me doing and my head going back and writing notes and stuff. So is there anything that you learned, or anything that was reiterated to you through any discussion, or anything that was said by any panelists?
I think for me personally, oh sorry, go on, Leela.
You go. No, go ahead.
Yeah, that it's not the end of the journey yet.
Strong.
And I'd been thinking that of recent, but I feel like it's just more prominent now. It's exhausting. This is the thing. If you want, I don't know, if you've got high aspirations, like why would it be the end of the journey? And I think potential is a great thing. It really is. When you run out of potential, imagine if someone was to tell you, "Oh, you've got no more potential." Like that to me is a very, very, very damning thing. So yeah, I've still got a long way to go, but that's no bad thing. Do you get what I mean? It's onwards and upwards. So yeah.
And you're confident with that, the process?
I am indeed, because I know where my life was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Add another 10 or 15 years on that. If I'm going at the same pace, if not, faster pace, then do you know what I mean? I think it could be fantastic. Yeah.
Amazing. And I think that's inspiring to a lot of young people to hear that life is a process, because we want things, not even just young people, but as human beings, sometimes we want things now, immediate gratification. So being told that it's a process, and actually being confident in that process is a great thing as well. Awesome. One thing that you learned, Layla?
I think it confirms for me that there are many different dimensions to identity, and that it is a moving process. But I'd just like to say to any person listening, no matter what age you are and where you're starting from in life, and I'm probably especially thinking of the boys I've been working with recently, no matter where you've been and where you are now, whatever you want to become, you can become. Just believe in yourself, network, and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the kind of friction you might feel in those environments is where you're growing. So don't take it as a negative.
Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's amazing. Very strong. Thank you so much for that. Michael?
I think pretty much it's all been said, but just segueing on from what Jason and they have said and have been saying, I think there's one thing of obviously knowing your identity, but another thing is owning it as well. You might be a loud person, and if you're a female, it might come across in a certain way in another environment. In the same way, if you're from a particular ethnicity, being loud or being confident may come across, aggressive or whatever it is. I think it's also owning who you are. And the point that Leah mentioned around, not caring, if you was to talk to your younger self, not caring necessarily what other people think. I think when we talk about the mind and listening to, and so when we talk about the identity, listening to both Jason and Leah, it's really around using your mind effectively. And that's why I think the most important thing, or one of the most important things, is building the right mental structures. Again, there's a word that says that a man that has no control over his spirit, or has no control over his mind, is like a city whose walls are broken down. And that ultimately just means that you can plant the seed of success, you can plant the seed of happiness or motivation, but if you don't have the right mental structures, somebody can come in and take out what you've planted, uproot what you've planted, or even plant new thoughts and new seeds. You know, I had a business idea. I thought it was going to be the best business ever. I called up one of my friends and said, hey, I'm going to start up this business. He was like, I don't think it's going to work. Someone else tried it the other day. It sounds like he failed. Suddenly he's just come into my mind and he's uprooted that seed that I've planted, and he's placed his own seed of doubt. So once you have your identity and you're confident in who you are, your heritage, your background, own it. You know, the value that you can bring is the confidence that you have in you, not looking to the person beside for a comparison. We say it all the time, you are running your own race. You can take the things that you see other people achieving and just channel it, build it up for motivation. You know, instead of being jealous or envious, just be motivated by it. Not because you want the same status or things, but just because someone showed you that it's possible. Now you also know it's possible. I would say that would be kind of the final thing I would say.
That's fantastic. All of you have been absolutely amazing. This will be available, because this was being recorded, and this will be available. I'll pull it up for you and send you the link so that you'll be able to see. A lot of people have already requested as well that would they be able to see this after, because some of them signed in a few minutes late and so forth. But this will be available for you to be able to see on our page, on our Instagram, on our website, on our YouTube as well. And I just want to thank every single member of the panel. So if we can go around, we're just going to give them a round of applause. Yeah, I'm quite cheesy, but can we give Jason a round of applause?
Thank you.
Can we give Layla a round of applause? Can we give Michael a round of applause? Can we give Yvonne a round of applause? Guys, come on, your hand should be like this. No, but thank you so much. You guys are absolutely incredible. And like I said, I will send a link to you, and I will send a link to all of those that signed in. Thank you for everybody that signed in, everybody that contributed. Sorry if I didn't get to read out every single person's comment. A lot of comments were going down, and I wanted to engage with you at the same time as well. All those comments, some of them I wasn't able to get to, but I'll read one or two of them now. Personally, growing up, culture meant everything to them, so they understood that being part of something as a sense of belonging and knowing who they truly are. One person has said that they're a believer, they're a Christian, so their identity comes from Christ. Another individual said that their identity comes from the validation of their close circles and those, let's say, in high position in terms of close position to them, pardon me, like their parents and their close friends and so forth. But a lot of people have just said, thank you so much, guys, a lot of gems, etc., etc. But like I said, I will have this up for you guys. And if you do want to stay connected to us, guys, it's on Live Creations, Instagram, and also the YouTube and everything. And we will continue delivering the identity program remotely for now. But then when COVID is done, we'll be able to go back into schools and deliver that program. But thank you so much. And you guys can sign out now.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.